Hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Luke Fox, and I'm one of the co-directors of the youth ministry program at Isle of Faith United Methodist Church. I want to start off this process for you just by maybe kind of answering the question of why you're doing this in the first place. What are the reasons for having a child and youth protection policy? The General Conference of the United Methodist Church in April of 1996, they adopted a resolution that was aimed at eliminating any potential for child sexual abuse within the church. And that adopted resolution, it talks about how Jesus said, welcome, whoever welcomes a child welcomes me. And kind of giving that idea that children are our present, but they're also our future. They are our hope. They're going to be the future teachers and spreaders of the gospel. They are our inspiration for so much of what we do right now as a church, so we can keep the church going. Not only are they the future, but right now they are full participants in the life of the church and in the realm of God. So our Christian faith calls us to offer both hospitality and protection to children and to anyone who might be vulnerable. The social principles of the United Methodist Church state that children must be protected from economic, physical, and sexual exploitation and abuse. Tragically, churches have not always been safe places for children. Most annual conferences throughout the country, throughout the world, can cite specific incidences where child sexual abuse and exploitation happened within one of their churches in that conference. And virtually every congregation has among its members adult survivors of early sexual trauma, including our own. So incidents like this, they're devastating to everyone who is involved. Of course, to the child that it happens to the family, to the local church, and to the leaders who then have to try to minister to people and deal with those consequences. And our churches are torn apart by the legal, emotional, and monetary consequences that can come with litigation following allegations of abuse, and sometimes the victims know that and unfortunately remain quiet because of that. They know that it's going to get messy, and indeed it does for everyone. It's just truly a tragic thing for everyone, especially for the victim, of course, but for even a much broader scope than just the victim. And so it's something that absolutely has to be avoided within our churches. We are called to make our churches safe places, protecting children and protecting other vulnerable persons from sexual abuse. And God calls us to create communities of faith where children and adults can grow safe and can grow strong. So our purpose for establishing this policy and the procedures that you're going to learn about that come with it is to demonstrate our total and unwavering commitment to the physical, emotional, and spiritual safety of all of our children, all of our youth, and anyone else in our congregations who may be vulnerable.
Hi, this is Tracy. I'm the Children's Ministry Director at Isle of Faith United Methodist Church. And if you are here, you are interested in protecting our children. And I thank you for making that a priority in our church. It does take a team effort to protect our children. And you're also going to see Luke and Sam Fox in the video. They are youth directors, and I just want everyone to be familiar with our faces. So if you do have any questions or concerns, that you can come to us and ask us any questions. So if you're here, you're either a parent, you have keys to the church, you volunteer for our church that puts you in around children 3 or more times in a year. You are a staff member, and I think that's it. But if you're here, there at the end of the training, there are some forms. There's a little tab that says forms. There are some things that you will need to fill out if you are each one of those people, and I'll go over that. There are a few things that we do have to discuss for you, so I'll just jump into it. The first thing that I want to talk about is how these forms define a child, a youth, and an adult. It's very important when you're reading the Child Youth Protection Policy that you understand these terms in order to understand what is allowed and what is not allowed. So, a child, a youth, and adult. Following the model of the public school system, a child is under the age of 12 years. A youth is anyone at least 12 years of age, but not yet 18 years old. And anyone 18 years or older who is still attending high school. So that's a youth. If you're 18 and still in high school, you're still considered a youth and you fall under the Child Youth Protection and Policy. An adult is anyone 18 years of age or older, or who has finished high school. So you need to understand those terms for when you go to the Child Youth Protection Policy and review it. Some other things that we need to discuss is abuse and what abuse is. For purposes of this policy, child youth abuse includes any of the following. Physical abuse. There's 4 different types of abuse, so we want to differentiate between the abuse so that you can notify us appropriately. Physical abuse is a violent, non-accidental contact which results in injury. This includes, but is not limited to, striking, biting, or shaking. Injuries include bruises, fractures, cuts, and burns. Sexual abuse is number 2. Any form of sexual activity with a child youth, whether at the church, at home, or any other setting. The abuser may be an adult, an adolescent, and another minor child. Number 3 is emotional abuse, which is a pattern of intentional conduct which crushes a child youth's spirit or attacks his or her self-worth through rejection, threats, terrorizing, isolating, or belittling. And number 4 is neglect. Failure to provide for a child youth's basic needs or failure to protect a child youth from harm. So those are the 4 types of abuse that we want to protect our children from, especially while we're at church and any other time for that matter. These are the general rules that we would like to adhere to when we are dealing with child and youth. The 2 adult rule. Generally, we want to have 2 non-related adults that must be present at all non-classroom programs or activities involving children and youth, one of whom must be a screened adult. Number 2, all activities involving children and youth must be supervised by at least 1 screened adult. Always, we need to have 1 screened adult. That screened adult has been background checked, and that is for everyone's protection. So we always want to make sure that a screened adult is around at all times when you're dealing with children and youth. The 3-year rule. All screened adults supervising children and youth must be at least 3 years older than the age group that they are supervising. Adults who do not meet this criteria must be under the direction of a screened adult who is at least 3 years older than the age group. So that would be as if you become a young adult and you want to volunteer in the youth program. You need to be at least 3 years older than the 18 in order to supervise that group. And if you are not 3 years older than 18, then you would need to have a screened adult who is 3 years older than 18. Number 4, the 6-month rule. Adult volunteers working with children and youth must be a member or regular attendee at church for at least 6 months prior to working with children and youth. Exceptions to the 6-month rule: the spouse of a newly appointed clergy or a transferee from the Florida United Methodist Church congregation, upon verification of screening and participation from the prior church. And number 5, windows and doors, open doors. Each room set aside for children and youth must have a door or wall with a window, half doors or open doors. Windows indoors tend to remove the opportunities for secrecy and isolation, conditions every child abuser seeks. Half doors should be considered for toddler to 2nd grade children to keep them from wandering outside the classroom. So these are just some general rules that we want to be aware of when we are supervising children and youth. The next section is supervision of the classroom activities. Number 1, a crib toddler to 2nd grade. 2 adults must be present for all classroom activities involving infants, toddlers, and children in grades kindergarten through 2nd, one of whom must be a screened adult. When feasible, there should be 2 screened adults present, and where the 2 adults are related, it is preferable that a 3rd adult be present. In addition, a designating floating adult should periodically check all classrooms. Children should be escorted to and from bathroom facilities or when otherwise leaving the room by either one of the supervising adults or by a designated floating person. Whenever 2 adults are not available to supervise, the classroom doors must remain open. Grades 3 through 5. At least 1 screened adult must be present for all classroom activities. 2 screened adults are preferred. In addition, a designating floating adult should periodically check all classrooms. Children should be escorted to and from bathroom facilities or when otherwise leaving the room by either one of the supervising adults or by a designated floating person who checks on all classrooms. Whenever 2 adults are not available to supervise, the classroom doors must remain open. Grades 6 through 12. At least 1 screened adult must be present for all classroom activities. A designated floating adult should periodically check all the classrooms. So it's very important that we follow these guidelines when we're doing activities. Not only does it protect the children, but it protects you as well. Next thing we want to talk about is responding to allegations of child abuse. And I am reading this from the Child Youth Protection Policy. So if you see this again, it's great because when you see it more than once, it really gets in. And we want to protect our children. So the Florida Statute 39.201 entitled Mandatory Reports states that any person who knows or has reasonable cause to suspect that a child is abused, abandoned, or neglected by a parent, legal custodian, caregiver, or other person responsible for the child's welfare as defined in this chapter shall report such knowledge or suspicion to the department. While the statute is limited to situations involving abuse by a parent, custodian, caregiver, or other persons responsible for a child's welfare, the moral imperative to protect children extends to other situations where abuse is suspected. Suspected abuse within the context of a church, day school, or preschool does fall within the description of the Florida statute, and a report is required. Clearly, when child abuse is suspected or observed, the moral imperative and potentially the legal requirement is to call the child abuse hotline. That is 1-800-96-ABUSE. Please feel that if you suspect child abuse, we're not wanting you to feel like you have to do this by yourself. We are here for you. If you do suspect child abuse, I encourage you to contact myself, the Children's Ministry Director, or Luke and Sam Fox, the Youth Ministry Directors, or the preacher or the worship director. All of us are able to help in this process, and we would like to know that suspicion is there so that we can monitor and take the appropriate actions as a church. What you are to do if you suspect child abuse: immediately, yet with dignity and respect for the sacred worth of the accused, remove the accused from further involvement with children and or youth. Once the proper authorities have been contacted, which we can do, and the safety of the child or youth is secured, the appointed clergy or other designated persons may, if appropriate, inform the accused that abuse has been reported. Follow the advice of the investigating authorities regarding whether the accused may be notified of the allegations. Before we get to this point, we definitely want Pastor Will to be aware of what is going on in our church. If abuse is observed by, disclosed to, or suspected by a volunteer or paid staff person of the church, the observer shall report the incident immediately to the appointed clergy or supply pastors for immediate report to the authorities as required by state law. If the appointed clergy or supply pastors are not available, the matter should be reported to the district superintendent. One of us is always here, and if it is one of us that is suspected of the abuse, Pastor Will is always here. Jude is always here. I am always here. Sam and Luke are always here. So there is always someone that you can go to. We also have staff parish that can help in this matter as well. If the accused is the appointed clergy or supply pastor of a member of his or her family, the allegation shall be immediately reported to the district superintendent and immediately reported to the proper authorities as required by state or local law. The district superintendent will take responsibility and act according to established rules of the Book of the Discipline with respect to claims against a pastor. If the district superintendent is not available, the incident should be reported to the bishop's office in Lakeland. C. Notify the parents of the victim and take whatever steps are necessary to assure the safety and well-being of the child or youth until the parent arrives. Note: if one or both of the parents is the alleged abuser, follow the advice of the authorities concerning notification of others. D. Take all allegations seriously and reach out to the victim and the victim's family. Show care and support to help prevent further hurt. Extend whatever pastoral resources are needed. Remember that the care and safety of the victim is the first priority. Respond in a positive and supportive manner to the victim and the victim's family. The church should provide a supportive atmosphere to all those who are affected, offering both objectivity and empathy as it seeks to create a climate in which healing can take place. F. After having reported the suspected abuse to the proper authorities, the appointed clergy or supply pastors should report the incident immediately to the district superintendent. If the district superintendent is unavailable, the incident should be reported to the bishop's office. Keep a written report of the steps taken by the church in response to the reported abuse. The report should be brief and contain only factual information relevant to the situation. It should be kept in a secure place. It should be written in ink or typed to prevent it from being changed. So factual information, that is only things that you factually see, like if you notice a bruise or a cut, You cannot make speculation in that report. I believe that this child is being abused is not factual information. What are the facts that led you to that suspicion? Those are the types of things that would need to be in the report. Church personnel are not to undertake an investigation of the incident. In all cases of reported or observed abuse, they should be at the service of the official investigating agency and law enforcement. And that is what we will do. However, we would like to know what's going on. So if you do suspect child abuse in the church from someone in the church, please let us know. We can do this together. Any contact with the media should be handled by a predetermined spokesperson selected by the appointed clergy and supply pastors. Another reason why we should definitely know what's going on. Note, the conference communications department is a good source of help when media questions arise. The church spokesperson should generally convey a spirit of concern for the spiritual, physical, and emotional well-being of all who are affected, and that the matter is being diligently and appropriately handled. The question that sometimes arises is, what about a confidential communication with a clergy person? Florida law FS 90.505 provides that some specific communications may be considered confidential if they occurred in the context of seeking spiritual counsel and advice from a clergy person. Thus, a clergy person may be confronted with the dilemma of discovering or suspecting abuse in the setting of a privileged conversation. While the church has historically placed a high value on clergy keeping such confidences, the 2016 Book of Discipline 341.5 provides an exception in cases of suspected child abuse or neglect. In the process of implementing or interpreting the Child Youth Protection Policy, err at all times on the side of protecting the child or the youth. The moral imperative is to do that which will best protect children and youth.
Hi, my name is Samantha Fox, and I am one of the co-directors of student ministry at Isle of Faith United Methodist Church. And today we are going through some of the aspects of the Child Youth Protection Policy, and one of the things we want to talk about is appropriate interpersonal boundaries. So the first thing that we want to talk about as far as interpersonal boundaries go are one-on-one interactions during counseling. Sometimes it is appropriate and necessary for counseling to be conducted, whether it's from adult to adult or a clergy to an adult, but the best practice with this is that it's conducted in an environment that provides visibility by other adults, especially if it is adult to child. If at all possible, another adult is to have knowledge of staff members' whereabouts and with whom they are meeting. Children and youth receiving individual counseling should be told that they are free to discuss any aspects of the counseling process with a parent or another adult, especially if they are uncomfortable about anything that occurs in counseling. All incidents of suspected abuse and neglect revealed during the session will be reported in accordance with this policy. As far as physical affection and touching goes, physical affection should be appropriate to the age of the child or youth. For example, it is generally acceptable for a 2 or 3-year-old to sit on a nursery worker's lap and to get a hug, or a baby to have a kiss on the cheek, while this would not be appropriate for a teenager, for example. It should be a response to the child's need for comforting, encouragement, or affection. It should not be based upon the adult's emotional need. Ideally, this should not ever give the appearance of wrongdoing. So don't ever put yourself in a situation where somebody else could see this as a wrongdoing. Ministry workers, our behavior must foster trust at all times. It should be above reproach. A child's preference not to be touched should be respected. Do not force affection upon a reluctant child. Church workers are responsible to protect children under their supervision from inappropriate touching by others. Church workers must promptly discuss inappropriate touching or other questionable behavior by other workers with their ministry leader, staff member, or a pastor. In no circumstance is one adult to take a child or youth overnight alone. We must make sure that female staff will supervise only female youth in their sleeping quarters, and male staff will only supervise male youth. Married couples should not stay together, but observe the female to female and male to male sleeping arrangements. You should not occupy the same bed unless it is with a parent to child. Because gift giving can be a form of buying loyalty or silence, gift giving should be done on a group basis or only on special occasions, such as a graduation. Gifts may not be elaborate, but should be modest and appropriate to the occasion. So we just want to keep that in mind. Further protection for the children requires that an open door policy must be followed. This policy shall state that the parents of the children served, the clergy, administrative, and professional staff of the church have the right to visit and observe the children's youth activity, classroom, or church-sponsored program at any time unannounced. Some important considerations considering we have been online for the past few months. We want to use ministry-based accounts instead of personal accounts if we're going to communicate or hold any kind of online meetings. This helps everyone understand that the conversations are part of ministry and outreach. It also allows for multiple administrators. If your church or youth ministry does not yet have an official account, which we do, we are told to create one and coordinate our messages and gatherings from those accounts. So I know Isle of Faith Kids and Isle of Faith Youth, as well as the church itself, all have ministry-based accounts. We want to keep using those if we're going to meet with any kind of small group or youth or children's activity. This also allows you to easily create and share links, as well as use password protection features to avoid unwanted guests crashing your online gatherings. As well as using ministry-based accounts, we want to continue to apply the 2-adult rule. Use platforms that allow multiple adults to be logged in at the same time, preferably. If it is a single user platform, or if more than one adult cannot be present at the same time, allow another user to have adult administrative privileges to go in and monitor accounts on a regular basis. This helps meet the window in a door or open door policies familiar for in-person meetings. Also consider having an adult, like a parent, or on the youth side of the call or video, simply appear and wave, acknowledging that the adult knows this conversation is taking place. We just want to take as many precautions as possible to protect not only ourselves, but most importantly, the youth and children that we serve. We also want to use platforms that allow for some kind of record to be created. Save the chats or text messages, save or record videos, create an activity log for which an adult is logged into an account, and using a ministry-based platform. So we want to note the day, the time, basic notes about the conversation and who they were with, and keep it current. Make notes about your attendance and plan group chats / online activities when possible. Document who is there just as you would take attendance in person.
Behavior policy. The goal of everything we do at Isle of Faith Kids is to provide a positive environment where we connect with God and grow together in Christ. We want our children to understand what it means to love others as Christ has loved us. That means thinking of others first, listening to others, helping others, sharing with others, and so on. We like to follow a certain set of consequences for a child's behavior, and if we are all consistent in this, then the child and youth know what to expect. The child will be verbally or non-verbally corrected and reminded in a loving manner when behavior disrupts classroom activities and ministry. We definitely want to focus on redirecting that behavior and giving positive reinforcement. For every negative verbal reminder, we want to back that up with 2 positive reminders. The second consequence if the behavior continues is the child will be pulled aside within the same room, visible to everyone, for a private conversation and prayer. Number 3, if the behavior persists to the degree that it is disrupting the classroom overall, we will notify the parents in the service that they will need to come in the child's classroom. And if the child causes physical harm in any way to another child in the classroom, we will notify the parents in the service that they will need to pick up their child from the classroom immediately. In our behavior policy, there are a lot of other great tips and guidelines. So I am going to go over the things that are definitely not allowed, but I urge you to go look at the behavior policy just so you know how we want to positively influence our children. And there's a lot of things that happen that we don't know how to handle. So it's just a great tool and resource to use. And like I said, if we're all practicing the same principles, it creates a united front for our children to expect. So Isle of Faith Kids staff and volunteers strive to show Christ's love to children in all situations, including the way we discipline the children in our care. The following are recommended guidelines for child discipline. The director can assist in this area and offer ideas and advice for specific concerns. Praying for your students outside of the class will also make a huge difference inside of the class. Number 1, never touch any child in a disrespectful manner or make derogatory remarks. Number 2, always use good judgment and allow the Holy Spirit to guide your actions when correcting or counseling a child. Number 3, corporal punishment is never allowed at any time for any reason. Number 4, appropriate discipline methods include redirection of behavior, praising, reinforcing positive behavior, a brief timeout, prayer, a teacher-to-child chat, or a restriction of class privileges. Number 5, when counseling a child, always do so in an open area in view of other screen volunteers or staff. Number 6, the only acceptable time to physically restrain a child is when you believe a child is attempting to do bodily harm to their self or another child. 7, providing opportunity to engage in the right thing often eliminates the desire for the participating in the wrong thing. Number 8, state directives in the positives. For example, Johnny, can you show me how to build a house with those blocks? Instead of, Johnny, stop banging those blocks. There is a difference. One is a more positive directive. And number 9, pray for your children. There are some sample prayers if you need help with that. And then the other thing I'm going to talk to you about is our bathroom policy. It is the most susceptible area for child abuse. So I just want to touch on that real quick. Children are to be escorted to the bathroom in groups. Adults are never to be one-on-one with children. Children are never to be one-on-one with each other either. In the toddler and pre-K group bathrooms, they are located in the room. What we want to do is position ourselves to where we're blocking the view of the other participants in the room while they are using the restroom. But we also want to make sure that we're watching them as well. So if the child needs help with pulling up their pants or whatever they might need help with in the restroom, we want to protect the view, like stand with your back facing the room to where you're guarding their privacy in the restroom, but you're also allowing others to see that you are not abusing the child as well. In the K through 5 grade group, staff will stand outside the door and monitor as 3 children of the same gender go to the bathroom. You never want one-on-one. We are fortunate that we're able to have one go in at a time, but in that situation, someone needs to always monitor that door to ensure that no one else is there. Otherwise, 3 at a time need to go. Never close a stall door when helping a child in the bathroom. If they need help, simply use your body to prop the door open, but block plain view is what I was speaking about before. All right, if you are a parent of a child of the church, at this point, you are free to no longer look at the information, but I encourage you to look at the Child Youth Protection Policy so you're aware of the guidelines that we follow. We also have a behavior policy that if you read in its entirety, you'll understand what we're doing in the classrooms. And if at any time you'd like to join us in the classrooms, I encourage you to do so. If you are a parent, we ask that you fill out the participation covenant statement located in forms. This is probably backwards, but I just want you to see what it looks like, be aware of it. This is just you signing that you adhere to these policies, you appreciate them, and you will follow them while you are in our church. We also ask that you fill out a photo permission of your child so that if we need to use a picture of your child for promotional purposes or videos within the church or on our Facebook group, that we have permission to do so. I also ask you, especially in this time of COVID-19, to please fill out the consent form for electronic communications with children or youth. This will state that we have approval from you to send emails or interact with them through Messenger or Facebook. You are entitled to get copies of all that. So please read it, either deny it or accept it, but just let us know so we know that you have done that. If you have keys to the church, volunteer more than 3 times a year around children or youth, our staff, clergy, or parish, you will need to have a background check. The application, the Child Youth Protection Worker application, and the background check and the covenant will need to be signed by you. These are located in the Forms tab down below. I know it says download, but it does open up a PDF version that you can print and fill those out. And then you can return those forms via email to myself, Sam, or Luke.